For our next session, we have a special presentation. We all know that civilized and prosperous societies value diversity and inclusion. But how do we get there? It takes leadership, it takes grit and determination, it takes empathy, it takes vision. Our next speaker spent 2 years interviewing some of the most remarkable women leaders in different fields around the world to gain insights into the leadership principles we should all live by. Please welcome Maya. Maya, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Sharma, and it is my honor to be speaking in front of such a distinguished group of leaders and thinkers. First, I'll give an introduction about myself. I'm a junior in high school, and when I was in 8th grade, I started interviewing women in leadership positions for my school newspaper. Each interview inspired me to do the next one, so I kept going for 2 years. Then it dawned on me that these inspiring interviews needed a bigger platform than just inside my school. So I started putting together a book, which is called Paving: Conversations with Incredible Women Who Are Shaping Our World, and it's getting released later this fall by Olympia Publishers in the UK. I'm so fortunate to be able to share my conversations with these pioneering leaders from different walks of lives with you all. These 25 Wonder Women are truly amazing. Their leadership in their respective fields have inspired and motivated boys, girls, men, and women all around the world. For example, Dr. Ada Yonath, the first Israeli woman to win a Nobel Prize; Adina Friedman, the first female CEO of NASDAQ; Beth Comstock, the first female vice chair of GE; Ellen Ochoa, the first Hispanic female astronaut; Jacinda Ardern, the youngest woman in the world to lead a country; Dr. Janet Yellen, the first female Federal Reserve chair; Lindsey Vonn, the first American female to win gold medal in downhill at Winter Olympics; Patty Murray, Washington State's first female senator; Pramila Jayapal, the first Indian American woman in U.S. Congress; or Safra Catz, the first female CEO of Oracle. I wanted to share some lessons I gleaned from my conversations with these pioneering women. And I don't have the time to tell the story of each of my interviewees today, but I'm so beyond excited to share some of the leadership lessons. I've categorized the lessons from the life journeys of some of these pioneers as follows: be curious, empathy and respect for others, don't take no for an answer, defining success, aim higher, and of course, be the change that you want to see. I'll begin with my first leadership lesson: be curious. A great example of a leader who is curious is Dr. Ada Yonath. So she was considered the village fool because of her unimaginable dreams, and at the same time she was dealing with the death of her father at just the age of 11. So in order to support her family, she started taking up jobs such as babysitting and teaching. And once she realized her passion for chemistry through her teaching jobs, she didn't let anyone stop her. She was inspired by Marie Curie and Albert Einstein, and today she's known for her breakthroughs in crystallography, which is a method for investigating the process of the translation of genetic code. She was the first Israeli woman to win a Nobel Prize in 2009. Another truly inspiring, curious leader is Dr. Jocelyn Bell Burnell. So when she was just 24 years old, she was working under her advisor's supervision, Anthony Hewish. And she saw this strange squiggle in the data she was analyzing, so she told her advisor, but her advisor actually told her that it was artificial. But because she had been tracking the signal for many, many weeks, she knew it couldn't be. And eventually the objects came to be known as pulsars, which are rapidly revolving neutron stars that emit radio waves as well as other electromagnetic radiation. So later, Burnell and Hewish ended up publishing a paper, but the Nobel Prize Committee actually awarded Hewish for what was Burnell's discovery. So 50 years later, her observation earned her a very prestigious award, a Special Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics, and Dr. Burnell is credited with one of the most significant scientific discoveries of the 20th century. Dr. Janet Yellen, one of my personal favorites. So she was just in high school when she was drawn to STEM classes like math, science, and chemistry, and once she discovered economics, she loved it because there was lots of math involved and it also included human welfare. So she was curious about fields that used rigorous thinking and also analytic tools like math. When I asked her about her struggles on her path to becoming Fed chair, she said, "It's very hard to become the federal chair because it's something that would be very hard to aspire to because very few people will get to do it." She also told me that I knew that I would be the fighting perception that you can't trust women. But because Dr. Janet Yellen was very curious about economics and passionate about the field, she didn't let anyone stop her. And fortunately for our country, she became the first female Fed chair, paving the way for millions of young girls. My next leadership lesson is empathy and respect for others. A great example of a leader who's always empathetic, always respects others, and shows her compassion is Jacinda Ardern. So everyone knows who she is. She's the current Prime Minister of New Zealand. And like I mentioned, every good leader must have qualities like empathy and respect for others. Ardern has used these qualities to get her through the dark days that our country faces. As I'm sure many of you all remember, last year on March 15th, there were 2 consecutive mass shootings at mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. We all watched Ardern's compassion as she mourned with the relatives and the friends of the victims from the worst mass killing in New Zealand's modern history. So when I asked her about it, Ardern said, "There's a real simplicity in remembering that we're all humans who experience pain, grief, and hope in the same way." I asked the Prime Minister what key leadership principles she lives by, and she summarized evidence-based decision-making, kindness, empathy, and the principle of guardianship that we have to hand this world over to the next generation. I really hope all our leaders have this moral core. So now I'll talk about Ashley Parker, someone who never takes no for an answer. So Ashley Parker is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist at the Washington Post and a familiar face on TV. When journalists like Ashley Parker start out, they face a ton of rejection each day, whether it's for an article idea, interview request, or simply getting into the field. A good leader must be able to handle rejection and use it as a motivator and a feedback mechanism to produce something better. It's very important that journalists go the extra mile just to get that last bit of information for their stories. And because Parker never takes no for an answer, she's able to produce incredible stories at the Washington Post each day. When I asked her for some advice for aspiring journalists, she said, "It's important that you're hardworking and always persistent. Take the assignments that no one else wants to take." I'm so thankful for her help and her incredible support during this book project, and of course for being a great mentor. My next leadership lesson is defining success. So Beth Comstock is the former vice chair of GE and the first female to occupy the office. In both 2015 and 2016, she was listed as the world's 100 most powerful women. So I asked her what key leadership principles does she live by? And she said, "Make room for discovery, open up to what's next and new, and always assume the best in others. Your definition of success will change over time." And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind so that you're always challenging yourself and trying new things and aiming higher, which is a nice segue into my next leadership lesson, aiming higher. So as an Olympian, not only should you always be aiming higher on the mountain, but also in your dreams and your goals. Lindsey Vonn is one of the most incredible Olympians the U.S. has ever produced, and you've probably seen her on TV during the Olympics season. At a very young age, her father used to push her to always do better and gave her the drive to become the champion that she is today. Each medal at each competition pushed her to challenge herself to try and get a medal at an even tougher competition. Aiming higher is what challenges you and what makes you a great leader, rather than just giving up or having the same goals. So when I asked her what advice she would give to her younger self, she said, "I would tell my younger self that all the setbacks she faces are driving her to a bigger goal." Squash Falconer, an incredible human being with an amazing story. So originally she wanted to be a farmer or a vet, which is a typical job to take up as a teenager living in rural UK. But in her late teens, she started working in the French Alps, and that's where she discovered her love of the mountains. And it was there that she met this group of friends that did a lot of adventure races, a lot of endurance races, and from there she started also doing more adventure, endurance races, longer distance runs, and getting outdoors more. And later, she heard about her friend's climb in a mountain in South America, and because she always aims higher, she decided to push herself to climb a mountain. So she kept pushing herself and having higher aspirations, which eventually gave her the confidence to climb Mount Everest. During her interview with me, she said, "When we were heading to base camp in Kathmandu and I got really sick in a tent in Namche Bazaar, I felt really terrible and I thought, this is it. This is the end of my expedition. We haven't even gotten to base camp and I'm done. But through hardships, intense physical and mental training, overcoming many fears, she indeed was able to achieve her goal, climbing Mount Everest." And later, she became the first British woman to climb Mount Blanc and paraglide down. How cool is that? Another great leader who always aims higher and pushes herself is Dr. Ellen Ochoa. So some of you may not know her, but she became the first Hispanic woman to go into space on the 9-day STS-56 mission on the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1993. Because of her relentless pursuit of excellence and her dream to be in space, that led her to fulfill her dream and, of course, pave the way for others. So when I asked her for some advice for aspiring astronauts, she said this: "It's not as impossible as it seems. Set high goals for yourself, work towards them, and whether you actually reach them or not, you'll still be in a better place than if you hadn't even tried. Opportunities only come to those who are prepared and those who have worked hard in whatever they have tried." And since my interview with her, I have been striving to incorporate these into my own life. My last leadership lesson is to be the change that you want to see, which I think is a very important lesson, especially in today's environment. So Jody Williams was just in university when she joined people in the US protesting the country's war in Vietnam. And at that point, she knew that she wanted to be part of a positive change in the country, and so in 1992, she started working with the international campaign to ban landmines and achieve the goal of an international treaty banning anti-personnel landmines. Just 3 weeks later, she received the Nobel Peace Prize for being the change that she wanted to see in the world. When I asked her what's the root cause of conflict, she said, "Greed and lust for power, which leads to gross inequalities, disregard for human rights, and disregard for human dignity." Jody Williams has spent her entire life dedicated to working on these causes. So Pramila Jayapal became the first Indian American to be elected to the US Congress. Jayapal ran for Congress because she felt there needed to be more people that represented the issues and represented the experiences that she came from as a woman of color and an immigrant. She didn't feel like there was enough diversity, so she wanted to change the way politics was expressed by having more women, more people of color, more young citizens especially, engaged in democracy, which is exactly what she did. So these are just a few of the women leaders and pioneers from my upcoming book, but there are many more lessons that I've written down. I really hope you all have found these women leaders as inspiring as I did. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to present these to you. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.